Love Herefordshire.
Love Worcestershire.
This is BBC Hereford and Worcester.
Let's bring in Jonathan Davis now. He is an economist and wealth manager. Hi, Jonathan.
Hello, Andrew.
I'm looking forward to speaking to you as you're going to make this nice and simple for me and those of us listening today. If we could start by perhaps explaining how we got into this situation.
This situation was created by, in effect, years and years of ineffective regulation. The bankers, it's not just Barclays, the bankers realised that they could get away with proverbial murder since about 15 years ago when the first major hedge fund went bust and the banks were bailed, they were bailed out then. And every single time over the last 10 or 15 years that the banks have done anything that have lost money, they've been bailed out. So we have in the global financial world a concept by the name of moral hazard. In other words, there is no morality because everyone knows that if they mess up, they're going to get bailed out.
Aha. So I'm with you so far. What effect, then, would this manipulation of lending rates have had on me and those listening?
Yeah, it could well, and it probably will have affected mortgage rates. I don't think it's affecting things now, because I think since the regulators have been in there for the last year or two, no doubt they've been keeping their head down, etc. But for several years, we believe this has been going on since about 2005, the individuals concerned here from various banks, I hasten to say, so there's more to come out of the woodwork. It's not just Barclays. From various banks, they were colluding at times to, in effect, raise interest rates marginally, and at times reduce interest rates marginally. And why would they do that? Because at different times it would help their individual financial institutions, and at different times it would help them personally with their bonuses. As Jesse Norman quite rightly says, this appears to be, from America and Britain, Barclays has been fined about £300 million. This is fraud. I don't think they'd be fined that amount of money if it wasn't fraud. So where are the prosecutions?
So what do we do now? How do we sort this out? I mean, I'm surprised that anyone with the various detail that's come out in the banking sector over the last however many years, I'm surprised we're not all withdrawing post-haste and sticking it underneath our duvets.
Yes, banking is just full of fraud as far as I'm concerned. The City of London, I would tell your listeners, it's where Bernie Madoff had his major operations. AIG, the biggest insurance company in the world that went bust. Lehman Brothers, the fifth largest financial institution in the world, went bust. And it all happened because of effective fraud in London, not in Wall Street, not in Singapore, in London. Until and unless we alter the way we relate to banks and bankers, little is going to change. The reality is that in the 90s and 2000s, banks were making profits hand over fist. You will, of course, know that there were illusory profits, because ultimately they lost it all a few years later, and the politicians of whatever colour across the world were delighted in this because they were taking in taxes left, right and centre, and therefore buying the services that they wanted to buy. The problem is anyone can do the research over decades or centuries even. Countries on a net basis never make a profit out of banking. Because look at all the money, indeed in the last few years, we have handed to bankers, approximately £1,000 billion. So it's all very well, we hear all the time we've got to have a robust banking industry in order to have a strong economy. Well, I would take issue with that, because actually all that is short-termist thinking. What we need is effective regulation. We're not going to have that because, you know what, the regulators want to work at the banks after a couple of years working at the regulators, so they're not going to be particularly onerous on the bankers. And we need to stop bailing out the banks to the tune of £100 billion a year.
So what, just let them go bust?
Absolutely. And if we do that, then I tell you, first of all, we will have £100 billion a year that we won't be giving to them. And to put that into context, you know what £100 billion would buy? It would buy 200 full-sized NHS trust hospitals every single year. In other words, it could re-equip the NHS every year. Yes, if we did let them go bust, what that would tell the global markets is that the United Kingdom, and again, it's not Tories or Lib Dems or Labour, it's all of them, because effectively the coalition is doing the exact same as the previous lot. It would tell the global financial community that the UK is serious about sorting out our finances and our financial industry. In return, I tell you, industries and companies would flock to the UK. Our currency would go through the roof. What does that mean to the man and woman in the street? It would mean that the cost of everything they need to live would plummet, because we import practically everything. We import food, fuel, heat and light, clothing, iPads, you name it, we import. And if our currency went up, our cost of living and our costs of running businesses would go down.
All right.
And that way we could create economic growth, which we certainly don't have now.
Very, very interesting to talk to you. Jonathan Davis, thank you. Jonathan Davis is an economist and wealth manager. What do you make of that? Let the banks go bust and our cost of living will go down. It'll make the UK a more interesting and economically strong place. Do you agree? 0845 300 8181.
Love Herefordshire.
Love Worcestershire.
This is BBC Hereford and Worcester.